yeah, I have high expectations for Aspire and Shockwave. I think they're going to do good things, and yeah, I think Titans are probably going to win some games off the back of these two playmakers.
This team feels like, you have, it's a strong engine with those DPS. I think that DPS line has something to show for itself. It's certainly upgraded. It certainly has like Shockwave Expire, especially, just like looks honestly pretty crispy on paper. Now the problem is if you're currently driving a tricycle with with faults as the front wheel, which is also not a wheel, it's actually a rectangle, and the brakes are pulled.
Let's zoom in into Vancouver, the other Canadian team. One of Harsh's old teams. The Battle of the North rival against Toronto. Already heard some of your thoughts on Toronto. You guys didn't feel great about it. We have the other side of the coin now where, a Vancouver squad, which I think overall, I'll go through the roster, but also I think overall, it's looking like everybody has upgraded, and that especially does include Vancouver, who did exceptionally poorly last year. I think the narrative is maybe different for Vancouver because they were so poor last year that, like, you look at them now, it's like, whoa, super exciting. And Toronto was poor-ish last year, but they still were a lot more respectable than Vancouver, for one. Maybe the expectation is different there because they weren't, like, absolute bottom of the bottom, whereas people are maybe you won't be as happy with seeing Toronto just doing a slow shift, either above or below, whereas Vancouver's doing quite a big shift. We'll have to see because even the teams around them have shifted as well. But I'll read out their roster. Aspire, Shockwave, Psycho on DPS. False Solo Tank. Aztec, Master, Scaripper on the support. With one caveat is that Vancouver did announce they have the capability and I think the desire to sign one more player. I think they said that they weren't finished signing, or that they could sign more if they wanted to, which maybe they can and will do and should do because they only have one tank. But yeah,
true.
I don't know if we want to zoom in yet, but does anyone have any initial things to say about this team?
I think initially, I look at this team and I feel like, I'm pulling up to the drag strip. I'm racing for pink slips, 10-second cars, baby. And there's like a Ford F-150 that pulls up, like some weird looking truck, kind of like saddles up next to me.
Google what that is.
It's a truck.
F-150.
Right. You're going to a drag strip and a truck pulls up next to you. And it's just like, I'm in my 6 sports car and there's this truck. I'm like, what's this truck going to do?
What if there's a truck category for drag races?
There probably is, let's be honest.
This man with this Bible Belt like lore references is just like way over my head, man.
This is definitely a Bible. I just Googled. It's definitely a Bible Belt car. This is a car that I'd be like, if I see this car on an open road, I'm like, I'm definitely in the Bible Belt.
See, you think that that's just not the case. You would think it definitely does fit. But,
is this a Detroit car?
If it was in Detroit, it probably wouldn't have any wheels on it anymore, right?
I got some bad news for you. I think Detroit might be in the Bible Belt then.
Hey, if that extends to all 50, then you know what? Fuck
you got it. What happened is there's a loose buckle and it just kind of like went way north.
Possibly. It's possible.
And hit Detroit. You're like, you know what? Detroit's part of the belt now.
So what I'm trying to get to is that, I felt like this was like a sleeper car. Like this was the truck that beats the Mustang, the sports car. Just like somehow, some way they've got something done under the hood that, gets them across the line just a little bit faster than some teams you might expect. And I still kind of feel that way. But we'll see. It is still untested.
My brother in Christ. How does that truck beat like one of the supercars you just mentioned? And how does this team even conceptually make it up there with the rest of them? What are you smoking?
Okay, whoa, slow your roll, turbo. Okay, listen, I'm not saying they're gonna beat
Ford F-150 goes.
Maybe there's like a sport version that has a few turbos, right? It's possible. I don't think the Vancouver Titans are going to be striking anywhere near supercars, but something that maybe there's something in that mid tier that people aren't necessarily ready to compare to the Titans, and I think they could probably cut in edgewise.
I I have a request. I want you to say everything you said in the last 5 minutes, but with no analogies. And just
I
say it
think
straight, so I can
the
understand what you're trying to
Vancouver
say.
Titans have have upset potential to break into the middle of the table.
Okay. So they're driving a truck in a drag race, but maybe they got some secret stuff inside the truck. Okay.
Correct. Maybe they got some nitrous. Maybe they can go real fast. Maybe they got, I don't know, fucking Mario Kart mushrooms that they're shoving in there. You know, who knows? But
Gotcha.
I think they can fight.
Yiska, your initial thoughts on this team?
So to go back into the analogy, right?
Mhm.
This team
here we go.
feels like, you have, it's a strong engine with those DPS. I think that DPS slang has something to show for itself. It's certainly upgraded. It certainly has like shockwave expire, especially just like looks honestly pretty crispy on paper. Now the problem is if you're currently driving a tricycle with with faults as the front wheel, which is also not a wheel, it's actually a rectangle. And the brakes are pulled. Right? This man will have to play the entirety of all tanks. And like I'm already skeptical of any tank player being capable of that. The arguably worst tank in the Overwatch League doing that is something completely different, my friend.
Whoa. We haven't even got into tanks yet.
Yeah, he said it.
Worst. Ooh, holy.
He said it.
That was some spice right there. Holy, okay. We'll zoom out. We're going to get back to false a little bit later.
Starter. Everything else is probably unfair.
All right, fair enough. Because Vancouver have a crazy strength of schedule, at least in the first stage. I think this is, I'm going to give Joe a bit of credit here. I think they're going to nos themselves up real fast in that first stage, give people some false sense of hope, and then probably still not really get too far in the rest of the year. Because, here we go, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Their opening matches are Boston, London,
winnable,
Mayhem, New York,
winnable,
and then it gets a little bit worse. Then they do it. Then they do Atlanta Shock, which is okay.
Yeah,
well,
they're not
gonna win those ones. But the first four are all maybe winnable.
Yeah.
Even New York. Even if you pull up to New York, who are not ready, and it's not the good meta for them. We're gonna get to the New York preview soon, and we're gonna talk a little bit more in depth about where their issues could be. But it's not impossible. It's not impossible for Vancouver to win that game. It would probably be even possible for Vancouver to beat Atlanta or Shock, but hey, New York's you could legitimately go 4-2 as your opening stage score, and that is good enough to get you into top 8 of the tournament. Top 8. That's probably good enough to get you in the top 8.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a 4-2.
Yeah, 4-2 is enough. Yes.
I mean, that's crazy. That's a crazy start for the Vancouver Titans.
And we've talked about how much confidence impacts teams. Like that's not something to sleep on.
Yeah, you know what's also sucking? If you have the easiest strength of schedule in stage 1 and win 0 matches.
Bro, that'd be something. That would be something. I mean, at that stage, both Toronto teams just win no matches. Then I guess no. Both Toronto teams, both Canadian teams. There's only one Toronto team. Because I can't even find Toronto's second game. Oh, here we go. No, Toronto beat a fine. They look like they have a lot of winnable games as well. Who knows? But yeah, do you really think Vancouver could go 0-6? I mean, it's possible.
Yeah.
But Boston's pretty. I think London's definitely beatable for Vancouver. Sure.
No, they are, but that's the 50-50, and everyone else is like 75.
Wow.
You're that bullet. I mean, it feels like you're that low on the Titans then.
Yes, but the thing is,
we haven't even
like, let's be real. I think there's a world where they just like realize they are in deep shit and they get another tank player. Getting another tank player is pretty challenging in this market. Which
is it?
I think so, dude. Like, who is left in terms of an A player with an NA visa, right? Like someone that's currently there.
I mean, you're not.
Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, let's get into. Are you about to mention something? Because I'm about to zoom in on the tanks because we're talking about the tanks already. So we might as well zoom in on the S in the tanks was inside parentheses, but zoom in on the tank. Open parentheses S close parentheses in case they sign another one. So again, I did say they have the capability and they have the desire to maybe sign another player. Just want to see if they act on that. Are they going to do that or not? I think, funnily enough, because we kind of talked about this before we started the recording, is there is a world. I don't know this. I'm just assuming. Maybe Vancouver would have looked at someone like Kaluge and thought, probably not. Then we could get Kaluge, but might just give that one a pass. And then Shock signed Kaluge, and now Vancouver's like, wait a minute, we could have just had Kaluge. Why didn't we just get Kaluge?
Yeah. So fried wiener
might be
this
kicking
again.
themselves up. So,
Oh boy.
Pulse is an off tank, right?
Yes.
So ideally they get a main tank player.
Yeah.
Okay, well Rhino's 16, so that's not going to be
That's
possible.
not happening.
You're not
Hey,
flying.
hydration's available.
Hydration's
available. Done. Easy money.
Oh.
Who's
I don't
What
like that
about seasons from Northwood University and Solaris?
yeah.
Eric
it's-
says Ben Best. You have to get a visa though. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I'm blanking
Forever
on
in visa hell.
who's the former Gladiators tank. That's Rhine, like the Rhine Beast. Scandinavian guy, Cloudy.
Alex Cloudy.
Oh, Cloudy. I was gonna say somebody's so off.
I was gonna say. I was
okay
gonna
with Cloudy.
say. I forgot his name now.
Yeah.
From
He's
season
an ex-
1.
He's an ex-League of
Fraggy?
Legends player.
Oh, Bishu.
No. Bishu.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bishu.
I'll say Bishu. Bishu. No, I think they'd want to. Why don't you explain? We're talking about options for Vancouver, and we haven't even talked about the one player they have yet. All right, Yiska, you have a gripe here, so why don't you open up on your gripe? Point to me on the voodoo doll where they hurt you.
Well, I think once again, it is very hard to like we in the Harsha episode we already talked about, like, if you think about the best tank players in Overwatch League history, then you're like quick to go to Super and Smurf, and even these guys had to split the main tank role. Now you're giving people the off tank role as well and say, please play that shit. That
Really quick. Not every team decide to split the main tank role.
right, and
That's not a normal thing.
yeah, that's true. Even though sometimes that also like hurt teams. Not in Shanghai's case because Fate is cracked, but nobody wants to give him the laurels and doesn't understand that getting to split playtime is a big competitive advantage that you have in your individual skill, but and still like the other players get gapped. But yeah, I think like it's a very, very hard task where you need an exceptionally skilled player. I'm not saying False is a terrible player, right? I'm saying this is a very, very hard situation that I don't think he's up for in terms of the skill departments and like that. Just like it's a rookie after all. That's another thing that's coming up. And also, I'm just straight up giving you the scrim juice is also not translating there. Right? So I think like this is a situation that they need to find a solution for. And I think they might. I think that's sort of like the caveat I want to give here. Because if you're zooming back, if you're trying to clip me out of context, if they're actually signing another tank, and you're posting this clip to me after the season going, like they are actually not like that bad, well, did they sign another tank, right? And if they didn't, and they are like somehow mid-tier, okay, then please pound me for that, right? But
Pound him. Yeah.
like
I've never seen False play in my life. I can't even begin to tell you what I think about False.
I mean, I'm right there with you. My only addition to that is that I have enough trust in the people that I have heard or that have seen him play that they do think he's good. But from everything that Yiss is kind of like pointing out, Is that
Okay,
you know,
good in what
things-
sense? Is it good in the same scale where woeful is the other side of the spectrum, or I'm not letting it go? Is
no,
he-
apparently not. You bitter
Is he-
X. Holy.
Is he better or worse than Mac?
Well, I don't know. That's a great question.
Dude, Mag's amazing though.
Oh,
Like, it's amazing.
so if he's then worse than Mac, then he has to be woeful, right? Is that how it works?
Sure. Yeah, that's exactly how that works.
Thank
You're
you.
right. You're right.
Thank you. I understand it now.
Joe's scale is binary. It's 1 or 0. It's amazing or woeful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's better. I'll take that over every team just being mid and colorless. And boring.
The thing is,
I mean,
like,
that's what I was
it's actually not strictly true because there's actually 3 phases. It starts off with good, so Shanghai is good, and like teams like Atlanta is good, and like Gladiators is good. Then teams like, let's say the Shock start being slightly woeful, like Jester's already very woeful, and then there's the lower threshold where for some reason it then flips, and then London and Vancouver are pretty good. That's the qualified. The pretty then completely flips the good around.
Those words all came out of my mouth. You're right. Exactly. Those are true and factual statements.
Is it a circle where you go so woeful it comes back to good again? Like, what is that? Is that how it works?
A circle of life.
In his strange little machination,
in his German fairy tale,
right?
it swings back
100%. It's Hansel and Gretel, and then how he thinks my brain works, or the words that I apparently say. I'll take whatever I can get. At least I'm memorable, right?
So,
Or
all
things
right.
like that.
So, Yiska's not confident about False being the only
Apparently
starting
not.
tank on the
Apparently
roster.
Look, dude.
I would also say, without having seen any False gameplay, I would also say that it's probably not wise to bank your entire season on a single tank, and especially not if they're a rookie. So that's probably a little bit dangerous, and it's I mean, you are prone to some real potential issues if this one tank isn't like an insane talent. Now, if this was, let's say hypothetically, because you said Mag already, hypothetically, if Mag was still a rookie and you brought him in this year to be a solo tank in Overwatch 2, I might give you that one because Mag had an unbelievable contenders run, one of the best contenders talents. I'm forgetting that Washington's last season existed for this example, just so we're clear. Then yeah, I'll give it to him. But unless you're like that level of a prospect, I don't know. I don't know that I would. I don't even know that again, I don't want to get too deep in New York because we're going to get there soon. I don't even know that I would trust Kellen solo tanking for New York
Very
just
true.
yet. And
Yes.
I think he's the number one prospect coming out of Korea for tanks. That's high praise. That's very high praise. And I don't think I would even trust him to solo tank. So that coming through, and with False obviously not being the highest praised rookie talent coming out of NA, it's also NA, Omega lol. Yeah, I mean it's super dangerous, and I would say that based on the fact that Vancouver said they can potentially sign more players, they probably should target a main tank player somewhere.
Yep, I agreed. Like, even as much as like I'm, the copium fucking snow dust sniffer that it apparently just huffs the mountains in the Pacific Northwest. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. You don't want a solo main tank in a game with a reworked solo tank position with multiple reworked tanks and additional tanks coming in the near or not too distant future, right? That goes without saying. So yes, I would agree 100% with everything you guys are saying. They should probably sign another tank, period.
Yeah. So Fried Wiener's coming back. Let's go, baby. Ooh, let's go. Yeah, I mean, there's players available. I just looked at Iron's available, but then he's also an off tank as well, so maybe not. There's gigs actually there. I don't know if they would go for some like gig. I have no idea how good gig is anymore. Fellow God Squad member gig. So I'm just throwing names. I'm like just throwing darts on a dartboard here, just trying to land on anything. I'm sure Vancouver will figure it out. As tank, I think we're all unanimously agreeing on is not really their position of strength. let's talk about one of their positions of strength. Or maybe this is the only position of strength, the DPS line. This is the exciting part about the Vancouver lineup. So, as a reminder, Aspire, Shockwave, Psycho. So, Aspire coming through from Toronto, his debut season, brilliant stuff. Really saved Toronto's bacon last year in many ways. One of the breakout players, I would say, as well, like in a surprising way.
Yeah.
One of the breakout players for sure.
Yep.
Shockwave, who had his breakout year 2 seasons ago now on the Vancouver Titans. He started on the Titans.
Yep.
Did well. Got given a shot on Fusion, which on paper sounded like a really good place to be. It took him a while to get into the country. I'm sure he appreciated the experience, got some actual stage, quote unquote stage, got some actual match time as well. But unfortunately, Fusion was a bit of a mixed bag result wise last year, so not the best end result for Shockwave, despite it being, or what it should have been. It just ended up being the opposite of the expectation everyone set for Philly. So now he's back on Titans, but I think we still respect him as a good player, even though Fusion didn't have the best season. I think everyone still gives him benefit out and respects that Shockwave is still a good player. And then you have Psycho, who is another player, like I literally have never seen this guy play before. So I'm just I will let that one just simmer a little bit for everyone else.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Let's be honest, right? This lineup at DPS is their strongest. Period. Like, I don't think I'm speaking for anybody when I say that. I'm pretty high on their supports, but when you look at Aspire's debut season, coming in last year, playing on a team he really shouldn't be performing all that well on, and looking quite good, much in the same way Shockwave did for the Titans the season prior, like you mentioned. I think that speaks a lot to the caliber of player these two are, and I expect them to do more than what they've shown in the past, if I'm going to be completely honest. I expect these two to have a very impressive season, as much as this may be a middling, battled team that, trades blows with some gatekeepers here and there. I think it's probably going to be off the back of Aspire and Shockwave. You look at, how many players in Overwatch history have come from bad teams, like who stand out, come from like mid to poor teams, but like are the beacons of hope. They are like the flag bearers, and it's very painfully obvious that they don't really belong on this team. And you kind of coalesce them into a DPS duo. Yeah, I have high expectations for Aspire and Shockwave. I think they're going to do good things, and yeah, I think Titans are probably going to win some games off the back of these two playmakers.
Yeah, I think that's very possible. The problem is, seemingly every hit scan position is now stacked in the league, and I mean, we talked about it with Toronto. Like, this is a good DPS line that could theoretically be stronger than Toronto's DPS line. But, like, they're not stronger than a lot of other DPS lines on paper in the league, right? Like, they're definitely very good players, but, like, or not very good. My problem is, once again, like, we're in a war with adjectives at this point. Like, it's all relative to each other, right? They are... Like, you guys know that I was borderline simping for Shockwave for a long time. I thought he had a lot of potential. I thought, like, it's an unfortunately tragic career in how this transpired, because not only did he make his debut on a pretty mediocre team and stood out, then rightfully got the call up, but then what should have been his absolute breakout season just turned into a visa disaster. And now it seems like, I'm not sure if he didn't have better offers based on that, or like if Titans just made him an offer he couldn't refuse. But this is really like the type of situation where careers go to die, if I'm being perfectly honest, right? Like, this is, if you're, it's really hard to stay hyped and stay hot and stay like this promising character for 3 seasons before everyone thinks of you as OG,
Sure, yeah, agreed.
I think I can see where you're going with the career dying part, because Vancouver has been that for like 2 seasons straight now where you're fried wiener, you go there from Atlanta, and then just you don't have a career anymore.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said that they probably just promised the players that they were going to sign other really good players. And I think if you look at this squad in the context of prior seasons, it's not that bad, but now is everyone's cracked, dude. The new level is different now. You don't have truly awful players anymore. We don't need to talk about that and I don't want to say truly awful about Rolf, but that Aztec is a massive upgrade on Rolf is no discussion, right? That Massa is an upgrade, like a runner-up Overwatch League title winner, is an upgrade over Fire is also going to be true, right?
Yeah. Everyone agrees with you except for Fire Season.
Right.
Yeah.
The DPS line is also improved, I would say. I think Linkshire is once again the typical case of a career dying somewhere, right? Dalton, Teru are players that probably would have not gotten offers elsewhere. Maybe Dalton. I honestly Dalton is the type of player that I thought could you have held out and maybe had someone take a chance on you on a better team. Now you're probably never going to be an Overwatch League professional again, right? But all things considered, they upgraded on all positions, but it's somehow still in the context of the league just as unimpressive.
And that's the same argument you can use for Toronto as well, right? And you can even use the opposite. It's the same argument, but in the opposite direction, where it's just yeah, man, Toronto upgrade. And I hate to bring up Toronto because we should be talking about Vancouver, but I do have a point to make here. Is that Toronto upgraded, but it feels like they haven't made any forward momentum because everyone else upgraded. And in fact, you even have to compare them to Vancouver, where because Vancouver also upgraded, it feels like Vancouver have comparatively done a bigger upgrade than Toronto has on their roster. So that's where the weirdness comes in. But even with the Vancouver upgrade, I still don't feel great about the team because, like Yiska said, the best part about the roster is the DPS. But even then, it's hard for this DPS line to compete against the truly good DPS lines that the rest of the league has, because you don't have to go too far and then you start fighting. For fuck's sake, Boston even have striker. You know what I mean? So it's you don't have to go too far to suddenly find a team with some cracked DPS on their roster.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's gonna take some massive, just whether it's the yips, whether you're choking, whether it's internal shit, whether a player, unfortunately is ill and can't play. That's the type of stuff that you're looking for Toronto to get into stage title contention, right? That's just not the caliber of team they are. And I think that's okay for this franchise. If I'm being perfectly honest, I think if you take this not as a rebuild year, I think that is a little bit too narrative. But I don't think they're too many moves away from being a genuinely solid mid team with upside. I think they're battling for that mid table designation right now.
And I think they're a team that can win games this year. They're not going to be. I care if they are a what's the term again? Entertainment thief team. I don't think they're going to be that this year. So that's a plus side. Let's talk about the supports now. Where, we have 3 supports. You already mentioned you mentioned Aztec and Master already. Excuse me. I ate and I'm just fucking burping and shit. Scar Ripper is on this roster as well, who I don't have a lot of info on. Just another one of those EU players that like Psycho. I'm well, sadly haven't seen them. Unlucky. Aztec and Master. So I can't talk about Aztec. This is going to be my strength on the podcast because Aztec didn't get to play a lot last season, and most people don't really know too much about him. He was a Toronto bench rider, so he gets the pop over from the rival Canadian team. I did get to cast this guy in Contenders though, and I gotta say, in Contenders there was a point where I'm trying to remember what season. It must have been 2020 season 1. And I'm like, I think this is the best flex support talent coming out of Korea. I think I legitimately held that opinion about Aztec at one stage. And I stand by that because to me, he was fucking he was cracked. He was so good when he was on World Games, so WGS. And WGS were not a great team. This was a struggling team that was not getting a lot done. And then he comes through. He actually wins, by the way, at Contender Season 2020 Season 2. Season 1, they do well. Season 1, they could have been won. The entire 2020 season for WGS was so good. And this is, by the way, the Season 2 2020, that O2 Blast sucked. They sucked that season. So you didn't have this overwhelming force O2 Blast. And for anyone asking, yeah, Finn was playing that, yeah. Finn, Proper Pelican, Yakpon Kalios Neko. That sounds like a pretty good team. They were all on that Season 2 roster for O2 Blast, and it did not go well. This is not going to be an O2 Blast discussion, but I'm just saying, like, there was a time and a place where in my head, I legitimately believed and said, and still hold this belief at that particular time, Aztec was better than Finn at that moment in time. I don't think that's true today. In Season 2 of 2020, I did believe that. Yes, that was true to me. And then Aztec went to Uprising Academy. I don't know what the fuck happened there. And then, we zoom in, and then boom, he's gone. Now he was in Toronto, didn't do too much, and now he's on Vancouver. I think a lot of people are like, well, this guy can't be that good. Toronto kind of sucked, and he never played. So, don't know what opinion they should have about him. But he was super solid. Anna was great. Moira was really good, even though I think most people are like, well, it's just Moira. You just autopilot the hero. But he like Fielder, he does some crazy stuff that gets some ults really quickly. He had some of the best coalescence timings I saw in Contenders Korea for that year. So solid player that I don't think actually had the time or the space or the opportunity to show what he's capable of. I'm just hoping he's not washed. Like his time on Toronto wasn't wasted, and that he's not super washed. That's all I'm hoping for, because I think he's got potential. I don't know anything about Sky Ripper, but I do know something about Aztec, and I can go on about Master as well. But long story short, Master was a very undervalued, extremely good player on Atlanta that gave them a lot to work with to help them get the second place. I think he was critical in that Lucio role. So.
I don't think that designation's too far off of like a lot of these other like just like flat out good pieces without any kind of like caveats or question marks or asterisks, right? Like I don't think Shockwave was properly valued by the league. I don't think Aspire was properly valued by the league. I mean, you talk about Aztec, maybe Aztec wasn't properly valued by the league. I think the Titans have landed a lot of really, really good pieces. Yes, are there holes? 100%. We don't know how Psycho's going to be. Fall set solo tank. Yeah, that's a very obvious and 100% a huge question mark. For Sky Ripper, again, rookie coming in, a great double flex support option, maybe cuts in Aztec playtime on some heroes, maybe. I've heard good things. Again, not a savant when it comes to like looking at EU, definitely didn't have the time. But from everybody that I talked to, he's high on their lists. Like, I trust those people. I trust these coaches. I trust these analysts. I trust, the people that have watched him play and grown. So I expect some sizable, sizably good performances for a rookie coming in. I don't know. I like this team. I don't think they're that bad.
Who are these dumbasses on TCP? They don't even watch Europe. Fuck. Who are these guys? Get them off. Get them off the show. Fuck me. Who are these guys don't even watch Europe. Yiska, you're from Europe. What do you think?
That's my life is finite. I employ a stoic strategy, and life is too short to watch Contenders EU.
Yeah, he's too busy just slide in my DMs.
Sounds very European. Okay, the support line though, Aztec, Master, Scarippa.
I mean, theoretically, okay, so I'm not going to fault anyone not succeeding on Toronto, just because that franchise in itself like is a question mark to me, whether or not that it facilitates talent well. I think Masters, of course, a very strong main support that probably was underrated last season, or probably even in the context of his entire career has been underrated. So I'm not concerned about their backline. I think that backline is like up to par with all the mid-tier teams except Toronto, because Toronto's backline is just like, I mean, Toronto is basically, the like dude with like big biceps, but like always skip leg day, right? Like just has stick legs, and then like if it gets to a fight, he just burns out like in 5 seconds.
Just don't let him hit you and just run around him. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't know. Like the backline, I have no issue with. Also heard good things about Skyripper. That's a British Hurricane alumni, right? So yeah, I think like in terms of how that backline is built, I have no issues. It's my thing is the confusion here, where if you're doubling up on roles in Overwatch 2, then not doubling up on tank is the weirdest part, right? Like doubling up on support is weird.
Hey, 4 supports, 1 tank. Ask Chengdu. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, so like I feel like if they'd probably be completely fine with Aztec, Massa, and then just like get another off tank in or main tank in or some. If they can do that, I think I'm a little bit more hopeful for them.
It has to be an NA tank now because they, assuming they can't get an EU or Korean tank anymore, so that does limit their options.
Yes.
Let's close up on Vancouver because we spent a lot of time on them now. Let's just go over some very quick overall impressions and maybe even a ranking of where you think their realistic position in North America is. Who would like to start?
I think I think I stand with what I said. To give a proper like metric, I think I had like Boston mid pack. I think I had somebody like right below them. Leave a comment below on who I'm blanking on. I think they're like in that discussion, but I also see where Yiska's coming from. Like I can see them just bottoming out just because of how good some of these teams are. But I do look at that strength of schedule and I'm like, these teams are these are beatable teams. Like these aren't just like a entertainment stealer like you mentioned, AVRL. Like this is gonna be a team that can compete. Although probably pretty close.
But how far can they compete?
I'm gonna say maybe peaking at like middle of the table and possibly being like a bottom NA team. Like the range is wide just because of how like dead middle, like 12, so like 7, 7 to like the last. 7. Yeah, I think that's like the
7th.
Yep, I think they can compete with a team like Boston.
You think that's generous?
I would say so. I think
okay.
From 7 to 12, I probably land somewhere.
I'm not letting this man get away with this. Give me a team that has a higher chance of being last.
London.
Okay. Is there any other team?
Higher chance of being last?
No, right? No.
You're.
No, there isn't. No, there isn't, Joe. We both know that's not true. And even London is like, you're not sure of that.
No, I'm pretty. As much as it pains me to say, like, just because of like who's on that team, like how like much they're like due for a good season. No, with what's gone on, no, that's what can you do? That's just a Bork situation.
Okay, I'm gonna throw a bone to Joe because the mid-table call is not impossible when you consider that, in my opinion, mid-table right now legitimately is a mix of New York, Toronto, and Justice.
Yeah.
Those are the 3 teams I have in my exact middle of the table. So you are saying that Vancouver could maybe beat one of them?
Yes.
Consistently beat one of them?
Yes. I look at New York and I'm like, bro, we have and we'll get to them. I know we'll get to them, so I won't spend too much time. We don't have too much time. What are you doing with this fucking roster? I look at Toronto. Go watch our Toronto episode. I don't think this team's very good. Justice, they're woeful. Let's be honest. Like, I think this is the Titans year, baby. Let's go Titans. Hashtag bricked up.
Like, I think all three of those teams between New York and Toronto and Justice would have this like what? Okay, all three. One out of those three teams would have the shit in the bed. While Vancouver also have an amazing season. So two
100%.
things going to happen. Vancouver have to overperform, and one of those other three teams have to underperform, and that includes the Justice, who you describe as woeful. They would have to have that woeful year. Whereas, I think Yiska and I had a bit more optimism towards where their roster could be. But I think we all could agree that Toronto, New York, and Washington have higher peaks than Vancouver by quite a fair margin, especially New York. New York's peak is unreal, which means it's far more likely that all three of those teams don't fall too far down within striking range of Vancouver, which again would also require Vancouver to step up big time. So I say it's not impossible, but would require a lot to happen.
Oh, 100%. I don't think it's I don't think it's like I wouldn't place a bet on it. I do feel strongly that they could probably compete though.
Joe, how far down could Vancouver be? Do you think they could come last? Could
yeah,
they come
100%.
last?
Yeah, easily.
So they could 100%. Come last. Okay.
Yes, but I think that's more to the difficulty of that like bottom tier that like it's gonna be a slog fest. Yeah. Like there's not like a clear outside of London. I think Vancouver could just flounder as if False is just as bad as Yiska thinks he is, you know, and this team just can't get their shit together. Yeah, they could be last, 100%.
Yiska.
Yeah, that's the last place team in the Overwatch League in 2022.
Just straight up last, like 20th place.
I mean, now you got to be fair because like London is in deep shit, having to replace a flex support this deep. So maybe it's London now, for being fair. But like, let's say the non-handicapped teams, yeah, they are.
Yep.
It's very likely they're going to toilet bowl it out with London.
Yeah.
For the
Valiant's about to get 5 members of Chengdu's. I mean, it makes sense. I get it. What's the peak? Like, what's the highest you're willing to give Vancouver realistically? You're saying they could be the bottom, or what's the if Vancouver were to perform well, like quite good, what is the highest you're willing to give them?
9th in NA.
9th.
Mm-hmm.
So that's still bottom 4, 9, 10, 11, 12,
yep.
Bottom 5.
Yeah.
Bottom 5, is it? 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah.
Were they last season?
Okay. I think that's pretty good. I think, yes, that's an improvement. Are you kidding me? They were bottom
100%. Yeah,
NA last season.
They were actually last, yeah.
Yeah, they were last NA very clearly. It was an entertainment stealing, you know.
But I think last year, though, last year, you knew their team was.
Yes.
There's no way. You looked at the roster quality, you're like, there's simply no way. Here, you look at their roster quality, you're like, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. Which is why I also think the 9-13 is pretty fair.
Mm.
I think they're definitely looking like a 9-13 team. I'm not going to give them enough to beat Justice Toronto or New York.
No.
Even though I said the New York game and their strength schedule is winnable, that's like, again, it's winnable in the sense that New York would have the shit in the bed and Vancouver had to play really well. So, yeah, I think a 9-13 realistically is also my ranking for them, with probably leaning heavier towards the 10, 11, 12, 13, or even maybe 11, 12, 13. Really depends.
Reasonable.
Because I think Mayhem in Paris could be reasonable, so that would put them above Vancouver.
Agreed.
Alrighty, so Vancouver have upset potential. Realistically, not expecting too much, but they have improved massively from last year, and most importantly, they're not going to be, I think, a team that is going to go completely winless. Not that they didn't go winless last year, but they almost did. They're not a team that's going to risk going winless again, which is important to me because I want to be able to watch them play and consider maybe they could win this game and not just assume they will lose all the time. So I'll keep my eyes peeled. That's going to be Vancouver Titans.